It's the Redemption Bowl Part 2 for the University of Wisconsin football team. I'm Adam Mertz with Wisconsin State Journal, joined by colleagues Tom Mulhern and Jim Polzine. Will be one half of the coverage team we'll have down in Indianapolis on Saturday night for the Big Ten championship game against Nebraska. Guys, these are different teams than when they faced each other last on September 27th in Lincoln. What can you draw from that first meeting that carries over into this game?
Well, I think Wisconsin's hoping it's going to be much different based on the defensive guys they had missing. Obviously, Brendan Kelly, Pat Muldoon, and Shelton Johnson were three pretty important guys. And the thing that killed them in that second half was just Rex Burkhead got loose. They did a really good job in building that first half lead and keeping Burkhead bottled up. And obviously, the way that defense played against Ohio State and Braxton Miller, their best game of the year, if they can do that against Burkhead, I think they're going to be in better shape. And you would think defensive ends, obviously, are going to be key to any strategy. But I do think it will help the way they played against Ohio State a couple of weeks ago facing Burkhead.
And Brett Bielema even said today that Chris Borland wasn't 100% in that game. Didn't think they'd have him at all. An hour before the game, he said he could go. So you wonder how what strength he was at, and he certainly is a difference maker. He'll be back this week after missing the last two games. So I think it'll be a different UW defense than the one we saw in Lincoln.
And carrying that over, you had injuries last week to Jared Abbrederis and Kyle Kostick in that Penn State game. Forecast right now that they'll be ready. On the flip side, Burkhead is back for Nebraska. He was a little bit limited, but Bo Pelini came out and said today that he is going to start. However, the Cornhuskers lost starting defensive lineman and a center against Iowa. So, if anything, it probably shifts a little bit in Wisconsin's favor at this point in the injury standpoint.
Two huge losses for Nebraska. There's no doubt about it. I think that's a big advantage for Wisconsin. Abbrederis is the guy I think they're most up in the air about. They've kind of danced around it so far, so I think that's a questionable thing right now. And we all know his importance to the offense. Just go back to that Oregon State game when he got knocked out, obviously. And when this offense has been without him, they've been seriously lacking in big play potential, and that's been an issue the last couple of games as well, as we've seen it for a variety of reasons. Wisconsin just can't make any plays down the field, and when they do that, we know how bad they've been on third downs. They can't march the ball down the field. They need some big plays, and when they don't, this offense gets really, really stagnant.
Even if he's not making catches, the threat of having him on the field is so huge. And he's really their only consistent receiver all year, from the start. And so not having him would be huge. They need him on the field.
Getting into that a little bit, what they've done offensively the last couple of games, what surprised me is that for a team that had nothing to lose, they played like they had everything to lose. From punting at the 30-yard line on a 4th and 12, which is a bad sticks, but still not taking a shot there, to letting the clock run out at midfield against Ohio State at halftime, to not going for two on either occasion here at the end of regulation.
And a bunch of third down runs against Ohio State 2 weeks ago.
Correct. And do you see that changing? And what does that reflect, that maybe they weren't ready to open it up? Is it a kind of a lack of confidence, lack of continuity yet with Kirk Phillips? And are they there after maybe seeing these last touchdown drives in the 2-minute drill? Those
are all really good questions. And they say that they have growing confidence in Kirk Phillips, but I think we have to go by their actions. And they have not the play calling in games has not suggested a lot of confidence in their quarterback. I don't know however else you read that. Obviously, they were in two defensive struggles, and their defense is playing really well, and they were playing to that, thinking that they could win a game with their defense. Mm-hmm. But we've shown that hasn't been the case this year, So winning those close, hard-fought defensive struggles that come down to a kick or something at the end, they haven't been able to do that. We all know their record in close games has been abysmal. So I think the quarterback is a big part of that. Protecting the quarterback, I think, is an issue. And as we said, threats in the passing game. So the quarterback's a big part of that, but I don't think he's the only part.
The one thing I'll bring up that a lot of fans are bringing up is Melvin Gordon. I think a lot of fans want to see more of him. He scored a 57-yard touchdown on a pass on the very first series. Didn't touch the ball again until the last series of regulation against Penn State. And I know Penn State, Brett Bielema said Penn State changed their defense around to kind of protect the edges. I still would like to see the guy touch the ball because I think he is a threat, or at least get him on the field more where he can come around on that jet sweep and maybe fake that, which should theoretically open up the middle for Monty Ball and James White. So, I guess I'm kind of wondering what this offensive identity is, and that's a weird question to ask 12 games into the season.
And on top of that, what I've been a little curious. What I have found curious the last couple of games too is they come out with great designs and great offensive schemes and innovative plays, and then they seem to get away from it for whatever reason. You know, they do it early and then they stop doing it, and then they get really predictable. So I'm not sure what's up with that either.
Going back, turning back the page a little bit here, 1998 team that got to the Rose Bowl. Craig James from CBS infamously said it's the worst team ever to qualify for the Rose Bowl. I guess, if anything else, this team has something to play for to beat that label coming in with 5 losses. It's crazy that they're in this position.
If Wisconsin wins, we better call Craig James for another assessment of his worst Rose Bowl team, but I'm sorry.
Do these guys have something to prove? Do they have a little bit extra something to prove because everyone's talking about them? And the way that close games have gone, I mean, you turn it a few different ways, and they're looking at a 2-loss season.
Yeah, that's kind of the way college football is, you know. And Nebraska's on the flip side of that. How many times Nebraska? 4 wins, I think, trailing at halftime this season and winning those close games. And it's you know, a kicking game, we haven't talked much about the kicking game. How many of Wisconsin's close losses have there been big field goal misses? That's been a factor. But it's a team that's not as strong overall. They're not as strong in the offensive line. They're not as strong at quarterback. They don't have as many weapons at wide receiver. They're just limited. They're in low-scoring games because they're limited offensively. So that's going to make it more difficult, and you're going to have more close losses just because they don't score enough points.
Brett Bielema brought up today that the special teams might be a big factor, and I kind of cringed. I'm like, uh-oh, because I don't think that bodes very well for Wisconsin.
Right.
But you're right, and I think there is something to the fact that everybody is talking bad about this team. We've heard backdoor Badgers, and I've heard fans complain about that, using that term to describe this team. And I think the players certainly hear it, and maybe they can use it to their advantage. I mean, maybe they can go out and prove that, hey, we belong in this game, and we're going to win and get to Pasadena again and prove everybody wrong. I think there's something to that, and we'll see if it works to their advantage.
We'll have coverage all week on madison.com, the page of the Wisconsin State Journal, including a lot of live coverage from down in Indianapolis, so stick with us.